half of the Temple Mount, and somehow or another the Antichrist or the one world government, whoever establishes this covenant between Israel and the Palestinians, will allow Israel to have the northern half of the Temple Mount, while the two Muslim mosques remain on the southern half of the Temple Mount. So I think, like Solomon wanting to split the baby, I think they'll split the Temple Mount, build a wall between the profane place, that is the Mosque of Omar, and where the Jews will set up their sanctuary or their tabernacle. So here is Ezekiel at the end of the tribulation period, going to Jerusalem on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, and this is in September, new moon, 10 days after the new moon of September, maybe early October, and he looks down on the southern side of the Temple Mount and he sees the archaeological digs. He looks at inside the temple wall and he sees the long, narrow windows that were built 500 years ago with the arch way round about inwards so that a soldier could stand there and defend the Temple Mount. Then he sees the eastern gate. It has two gates. They are the same width as the gates are today. And by the way, the current eastern gate stands atop the earlier eastern gate. The eastern gate that was there in the days of, shall we say, Ezekiel, or in the days of Herod's temple, are actually buried underground. It's still there, but it's buried. The original eastern gate. So the modern eastern gate is built on top of the earlier one. And then Ezekiel sees a wall that makes a separation between the Jewish sanctuary and what he calls the profane place, which I consider to be the Mosque of Omar. Now, this is still the same day. It's Yom Kippur. At the end of the tribulation period, in the seventh year, as he described the aftermath, the burning of the weapons for 7 years after the battle of Gog and Magog. And then, chapter 43, behold, the glory of the God of Israel came from the way of the east, and his voice was like the noise of many waters, and the earth shined with his glory. This is the second coming of Christ. This is the same event as we see in Revelation chapter 19, when the heavens open and Christ returns. It says, it was according to the appearance of the vision I saw, even according to the vision that I saw when I came to destroy the city. That's back earlier in the book of Ezekiel, when the glory left. Well, now the glory is returning. And he says, it looks just like the glory that I saw when it left the Temple Mount during the Babylonian captivity, just before the destruction of the temple in 587 BC. And now, many thousands of years in the future, to the end of the tribulation period, he comes and he sees that glory that left. He sees it return. And it returns in the form of a person. And it says, the earth shined with his glory. And it was according to the appearance of the vision I saw. And the visions were like the vision I saw by the river Chebar, and I fell upon my face, and the glory of the Lord came into the house by the way of the gate whose prospect is toward the east. So the Lord came to the Mount of Olives, and then he came across and through the eastern gate, and the Spirit took me up and brought me into the inner court, and behold, the glory of the Lord filled the house. So the temple was, shall we say, blessed with the Shekinah glory of God. And he, the Messiah, said unto me, Son of man, the place of my throne, and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel forever. And my holy name shall the house of Israel no more defile, neither they nor their kings by their whoredoms, nor by their carcasses of their kings in their high places, in setting of their threshold by my thresholds, and their post by my post, and a wall between me and them. So he's making a reference here, I think, to the Muslim mosques. He's saying, and by the way, when the Lord comes back, those two Muslim mosques are still going to be there. The Mosque of Omar will still be there. It's not going to get blown up, not going to get torn down, not going to get mailed back to Mecca. It'll still be there when Jesus arrives at his second coming. There'll be a Jewish sanctuary, but a wall will be built to make a separation between the profane place, the Muslim Mosque of Omar, and the Jewish temple or tabernacle. So that's the way I see it when the Lord returns and he tells Ezekiel, I'm here to reign and rule, set up the Messianic era, and rule over the house of Israel. And you know, chapter 44 says, he brought me back the way of the gate toward the outward sanctuary, which looketh toward the east, and it was shut. Yeah, that eastern gate was shut. When the Lord comes back at the end of history to establish the millennial reign of Christ, the eastern gate will be shut. It says, then the Lord said unto me, this gate shall be shut, it shall not be opened, and no man shall enter in by it, because the Lord, the God of Israel, hath entered in by it, therefore it shall be shut. Will it ever be opened? Not according to this. The Messiah says that it will remain shut. Why? Because one day he came through that gate on a little donkey and was rejected and nailed to the cross within a week, just a few days later. So he says the gate stays shut. Well, he will come to the Mount of Olives, and somehow he will go over the eastern gate into the temple area, bypassing going through the eastern gate. And then when Ezekiel asked him about it, why is it shut? Why is the gate shut? See, the gate has been shut for hundreds of years now. In 1917, the Muslims, the Turks in charge of the Temple Mount, tried to open the gate. In fact, they set up jackhammers inside the gate and were going to break it open. But the next morning, instead of opening the eastern gate, General Allenby flew his 200 airplanes across the Temple Mount, demanding surrender, and that day conquered the city of Jerusalem without firing a single shot. Liberated Jerusalem, December 9th, 1917, with the Turkish jackhammers set up at the eastern gate, ready to break it open the next morning. But the gate stayed shut. Isn't that amazing? In 1967, the king of Jordan wanted to open the eastern gate. He wanted to build a hotel where the Western Wall is today. And to do that, of course, would block off the Margrabi Gate on the southwestern side. And so he was going to open the eastern gate. And they were preparing to open the eastern gate when the 6-day war broke out and the gate stayed shut. Well, according to the scriptures, that gate will never be opened. So what Ezekiel sees in his vision as he goes into the future to what I believe is this generation, he sees things that we can see today. It's a fascinating read. Ezekiel chapters 38 through 44. I'm J.R. Church. We'll see you again tomorrow with our analysis of the news.